right, welcome to another edition of Outspoken. I'm Dan Sileo, and we have an absolutely packed show for you. Guys, fire the cannons. All right, folks, when did it become an issue on going to the White House if you were a sports team? I mean, we saw something spectacular this past week at the State of the Union and also at the White House. That was a team being honored. I tell you this all the time. We are not caring who is in the White House. I only care that my team is being revered and being honored. I thought it was an absolutely awesome moment to see Team USA hockey there at the State of the Union and also at the White House. In 1987, I had this presented to me, and this is a national championship ring. We went to the White House, and it was one of the absolutely most polarizing times that an athlete and a team could have when you go and have your team honored. Folks, I say this all the time to you. It's not about the guy in the White House. It's about your team being honored. And when you get an opportunity to be revered like this, and the nation gets a chance to celebrate great moments. I didn't care that Ronald Reagan was in the White House. I only cared that my team was being honored and we were being revered around the country. It was one of the greatest moments in my entire life, is having our 1987 team honored by the President of the United States. I don't know how this became an issue. How is it a debate? How are we in this position when having a team that does something great? And it was a polarizing moment watching Team USA win the Olympic gold medal, men and women. Obviously, there was some missteps by the president on the women's side. We'll get to that a little bit later. But at the end of the day here, man, some of these people that cover sports today, you're weirdos. This comes down to revering a moment. Seeing these guys represent our country is truly one of the absolutely greatest things that an American athlete can have. Standing on the podium, having Team USA all across your chest. It's not about the name on the back of the jersey. It's about the nation that's on the front of your jersey. That was a great moment for our team and for Team USA and for America. And a polarizing moment like we are in today, with people being divided in our country. Why are we so on the side of trying to divide a nation with sports? Sports is a galvanizing thing that we have in our country. It's one of the greatest things that we have in our country, and that is celebrating when Team USA does something great. I don't know how going to the White House has become a thing, and it is a polarizing thing for people to dissect it and say, why are you going? What, are you kidding me? It was one of the greatest moments in my life, going and seeing the president and having him celebrate our 1987 team that won the national championship. Let me go over to what's going on in Philadelphia right now with A.J. Brown. I got to tell you, either A.J. Brown hates Jalen Hurts or he hates Nick Sirianni. Pick one. How can you be a guy that over the last 4 years is 50-18? He's making north of $31 million. He's got 2 NFC championships, and he's got a Super Bowl, and he's really revered as arguably the best receiver the organization has had since Terrell Owens. What's your problem? Why are you reading books on the sideline? Why are you unhappy? Why was that the biggest name being talked about at the NFL Combines this past week? What would be the trade value? What would we get in return if we end up Howie Roseman sending A.J. Brown to a team like New England? This guy's been one of the absolutely best players. You either hate the quarterback or you hate the coach. What's the problem? Why are you reading books like War and Peace on the sidelines during NFL games? Why are you dropping passes in a San Francisco playoff game? You look disengaged with your football team. I get it. It's the position of wide receiver. It's the diva position of wide receiver. You see where A.J. Brown is right now in his career? He's looking at legacy. He's looking at numbers. He's looking potentially at being a guy who could go to Canton. He's looking at the fact that the quarterback there in Philadelphia does not throw on time. He is not a quarterback that's going to elevate A.J. Brown's numbers. So much so that they completely revamped the entire offensive coaching staff, the Philadelphia Eagles did, to try to accommodate A.J. Brown, but they did it with, guess what? They did it with limited people. The offensive coordinator that they hired, Sean Mannion, this guy's been a coach for 25 months. 25 months. And you think that's going to suffice? A.J. Brown, for him to stay in Philadelphia? Absolutely no way. Make no mistake about it. I'm saying New England looks like a probable spot for him to land. They're talking about a 1-3. That would be obviously the 31st pick in the draft and a third rounder. Howie Roseman is just not going to give this guy away. He's been one of the most productive wide receivers in pro football, but he's been also a distraction with the football team the entire year. There was even a confrontation on the sidelines when Nick Sirianni, the head football coach of the Eagles, confronted him about his effort level in the game. There's no doubt about it. So that is going to be one of the storylines over the next 10 days. The Eagles are saying they'd like to have a decision on A.J. Brown in the next 10 days as we get ready for the start of free agency on March 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Also, help me out here on our media. I just got through mentioning Team USA. Why do people like Jack Brewer from The Athletic have to turn everything into a political commentary when it comes to something so grand as what we saw with Team USA, both men and women winning the Olympic gold medal? Help me out here. Why are we in this room? Why are we here when a guy like Jack Brewer from The Athletic, by the way, I canceled my subscription to The Athletic because to me, where are the days when people covered sports and didn't turn it and politicize it the way they do? Why do we have to have in our medium, and this is my media, sports media, dissected? You see in news, guess what? You can move the goalpost at any time. You know the greatest thing about sports is? The greatest thing about sports, you can't move scoreboard. You can move the goalpost in news talk and who won elections or not. You know what you can't do in sports? There's no gray area. Scoreboard, baby. Winners and losers. People hate that because you know what you have in sports? You have the word clarity. People hate the word clarity because there's a winner and a loser. People like to sit there nowadays, give out these commemorative medals where you get these new participation medals. To me, those go in the garbage can. Like Ricky Bobby says, baby, you're either first or you're last. And that's the greatest thing about sports. Okay? There's no gray area. This is what makes sports galvanizing. This is what makes everybody come together. Not our media, though. They could pollute anything. They could turn anything into a bad story and have half the country sitting there going, why are Team USA celebrating a gold medal? This makes no sense. It was an absolutely sensational moment for our country. All right. Speaking of sensational, our great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the number one injury law firm in all of America for a reason. Folks, I tell you about the great stories that Morgan & Morgan does for people across this great country. Like the family in Florida that was initially offered $350,000. They ended up getting $12 million in settlement. Or the family in Pennsylvania that was initially offered $650K. They ended up getting nearly $30 million in settlement. There's no firm like Morgan & Morgan. Go to forthepeople.com/sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. And you make sure you do me a favor and you tell them that Big Sales sent you there, man. Great folks, great friends of ours, and we so love it. By the way, speaking of great friends, James Young, coach, where are you? Coming up here, we're going to talk some college and pro basketball next, right here on SportsGrid. How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too, and what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago? How much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
This is one of my absolutely favorite people when we get on our program here. Coach Young joins us here now, and I appreciate you rolling in here with us, man, each and every single weekend now. I got to start it out with this. You tell me, as you get ready for college basketball's tournaments, the tournaments for the conference versus NCAA tournament, is there any difference in how you prepare for conference basketball versus the NCAA on how a coach preps his teams and getting ready for the postseason?
Yeah, it's actually pretty different, Dan, because of the fact of going back to back in conference play. You see teams playing 4 games in 4 nights. You got to manage minutes. You have to do a lot of different things. Whereas at the NCAA tournament, it's either a day between or 3 or so games between. That's why when you get to the tournament, you got to look at guys that are like really good tacticians in regards to short rest, meaning next day of a conference tournament or 1 day off in between, let's say, the round of 64 and the round of 32. Tom Izzo, really good at coming up with different things that you are not ready or you've not seen. Dan Hurley doesn't get a lot of credit. What he should do is get a lot of credit for where they are defensively and his half-court offense. So I think that becomes a thing. Back in the day, Sills, you know this, you never wanted to play a man team and then go play Jimmy Boeheim in Syracuse, right? Because it's a completely different style. Pete Carrill with the Princeton offense. When you see X and then you got to go around and see Y the next day or 48 hours later, Big Sills, that becomes a really hard and not a lot of prep time to get ready for that next matchup.
What teams do you think are starting to separate themselves from the rest of the group? Or is it still, do you think right now, is it 5 teams and then the field? Or are you starting to see, how big is that pool where you would go, these 5 or 6 or 7 teams versus the field on winning the national championship? Tell me where that number is right now. Maybe some teams that are separating themselves.
Well, Big Sales, obviously Duke's win, and we talked before last week's game versus Michigan, just showed how great of a team they is, and we saw Michigan's guards struggle mightily defensively, offensively. We did see them come back, obviously, with a really good performance against Illinois last night and Brad Underwood's team. Obviously, Michigan is there. Duke is there. I think Arizona's there. Arizona's got a really big game with Kansas today. Let's see if they can get the win after losing at Fog Island earlier in the year. But then, Big Sills, there's other teams that I think people need to start looking at. Did you guys see what I went on Saturday night, Big Sills. You know what? I was there at Villanova, UConn, and saw what Dan Hurley did in the first half. only to beat St. John's by 30-some-odd points and hold the team without a field goal for the last 15 minutes? Who does that? So now UConn, Big Sills, is playing at that level where like, uh-oh, here comes UConn, and then there's Florida. This time last year, right, Sills? This is where they turned the corner, Todd Golden's team. Completely different team now with the three big-headed monster of Thomas Howell, Alex Conlon, and Ruben Chinalu. They are playing as good as anybody in the country. I don't want anyone to get in Florida's way because I don't know. Like last year, we're going to lose another game.
Okay, I have to do this because you just mentioned the Gators. So I when you threw Gators in there, I have to kind of go like this because me being a Hurricane here. Also in the Big 12, is there anybody that challenges Houston?
Yeah, a lot of teams because Houston's on a 3-game losing streak. By the way, Houston playing right now. I loved Houston in the first half. Big Sills. I think Calvin Sampson almost killed one of his kids in practice. That's how hard he practiced him. They're going to make someone pay. And unfortunately, it's going to be Tad Boyle's crew. Now, to me, there's more than that. I think Iowa State, when TJ Osberg is one of the best coaches in the country, they have really good depth. I think it score the ball. Arizona's been really good. BYU, we don't know what we get. They beat Iowa State by 10 last weekend. Then they give up 95 points to UCF the next game. They're dangerous. So the Big 12 is going to be an absolute dogfight down the stretch. I am still a Houston guy. I'm still a Houston backer. Key with Houston today moving forward, keep Joseph Tuggle out of foul trouble. Emmanuel Sharp, Milos Uzon must shoot better from the floor.
John Calipari's Arkansas Razorbacks, can they win a national championship? Are they still going through that process of getting that program back to Nolan Richardson and what he had back in the day when it was a contender each and every single year? Or do you think, again, that this team has a shot? If put in the right bracket, they have a chance to go all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, absolutely, Big Sills. Styles make fights, right? So if you get them in a team where they can get up and down the floor with, I think that will be good for them. But today, Sills, they're in a tough spot. They're going to go against Rick Barnes. I said it earlier, just a college basketball day with Kevin Walsh. There's 3 coaches in the country that get you to play their way better than anyone else, particularly at home. One is Kelvin Sampson, 2 is Coach Bennett at St. Mary's, and 3rd is Rick Barnes at Tennessee. Be very wary of Tennessee today in this matchup. You have one of the best offensive and defensive rebounding team against a team that does not rebound. Jalen Carey should have a big game. But for Cal's crew, if they get the right matchups, absolutely. Saw it last year in that 7-2 game, just throttle St. John's because they got in a matchup that they liked. They could still make a run.
UNC, can they make any noise in the ACC tournament, and can they make any noise in the NCAA tournament? Do you think that team is packed enough with enough talent to be able to make a run?
Well, to me, Big Sills, it's about the health of Caleb Wilson, getting him back. Obviously, you saw Seth Trimble coming back to lineup. Vasir's got to play as well. But, to me, this is a really big year for Hubert Davis. I'm going to be honest with you, folks, because I had going to the season saying if they didn't make the tournament, they didn't make a run, that you could look at Hubert Davis being possibly out of a job and getting away from that Carolina family if they went somewhere else. They've been good. They have a good spot tonight. They should be able to get the win. But they need Caleb Wilson back because we saw when they were healthy, you saw what they did to Duke. They're the only team, and I think in the ACC, if healthy, that can knock Duke off the porch.
In 30 seconds, is Hurley the best coach in the country?
He's the best motivator in the country. He gets his kids in. And me being a Jersey guy, I'm a little biased. I got a chance to, I've known Dan. I got to coach against Mr. Hurley when he was at St. Anthony. So I know there's no guy that gets his team better prepared for Dan Hurley. If key with Dan is this, if he controls his emotions with the referees and his team is laser focused, there's not a tougher team in the country than the UConn Huskies.
Man, I'll tell you, I'm with you. And, as you know, we had Coach Calhoun on, and Coach Calhoun was talking. This may not be the same team of a couple of years ago, but as you just mentioned, Coach, you talk about being a great motivator. He is that, no doubt. We're going to bounce the basketball up to the NBA with Coach Young. We'll do that next right here on SportsGrid. How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here, I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
We're going to talk some NBA now with our friend Coach Young here and get his thoughts on what the best team in the NBA is. But first and foremost, Coach, I want to get your opinion on Erik Spoelstra. I'm friends with Pat Riley, and when he named him as the head coach of the Miami Heat years ago, I'm like, this guy came out of like a quality control, if you want to use the NBA and the NFL comparison on who he was. He was like a video guy, and everyone back in the day was like, who's this guy? My God, I mean, he's turned out to be a Hall of Fame coach. Your opinion on Erik Spoelstra? Are you looking at the best coach in the NBA?
Yeah, I'm looking at one of the best coaches in the NBA, one of the best coaches of this generation. And Spoelstra continues to do and play his team a lot, in regards to overachieving, right? Right now, obviously, you're sitting in ninth, 8th place, 31-29 in the Eastern Conference, but Spo, how can I say? Here's the best way to describe Spo. I feel, in my opinion, coaches don't win regular season games, but they win you playoff series because it's that after the game adjustment to the next game where Spo gets you. When you look around the league, you talk about obviously Steve Kerr. For a while, we talked about Nick Nurse out of Philadelphia. We talked about Ime Udoka, right? Rick Carlisle. Jason Kidd has done a great job now. He's gotten his 3rd stop in Dallas, even though they're having a terrible year. We got to put Spoelstra up there. Not only for what he's done for this year, but his totality of work, his longevity of work, being an 18, getting to the finals. Erik Spoelstra is one of the 5 best coaches in the league. And I'm going to say this. He's top 10, in my opinion, 15 of all time of coaches.
Wow. Is Wemby the best defender in the NBA right now?
You know what? I'm going to go with 1A and 1B. Yes, Wemby, because of his length, his athleticism, all the different ways that he can defend and what he can do at 7'5", what is a wingspan and guard, honestly, 1 through 5 at times. But I want to give a little bit of respect to the Thompson twins, Asor and Amen Thompson. They are rugged. They are tough. They're 6'8" or so. They can guard 1 through 4, 5. They can guard point guards. They can get you in a screen and roll game. They can pick you up full court. They can guard you in a post. They're rugged rebounders. Wemby is number 1, but to me, right there is Amen and Asor Thompson.
Best team in the NBA, in your opinion, right now?
I still think it's Oklahoma City. Sills, I'm just not a big believer in the Pistons when it comes down to it. I don't know if this, Larry Brown 2004 or this, Bad Boys reincarnated. Sills, this ain't gonna fly in the playoffs. You actually think they're gonna go let these guys rough up Donovan Mitchell? You think they're gonna let them rough up Jalen Brunson? You think if they get to the finals, they're gonna rough up SGA or Wemby? You think the NBA is gonna allow that when they're so protective of their stars, of their ratings? Come on, get out of here with that mess. They're a good team. I like them a lot, but they need to stop the roughhouse junk and just play solid basketball. And still, I don't trust JB Bickerstaff in a big game if I had to put my mortgage on it.
Yeah, you're not going to see Rick Mahorn and Bill Laimbeer out there with that Pistons team in today's NBA. That's not happening. The MVP race, who do you got in your top three here?
Well, to me, it's Nikola Jokic is actually, if he's going to make the game. That's the problem you have, Stills, is Jokic and SG are going to be really close to, do they make the 65-game number? That's where you put Cade in there. Because if Detroit is going to be the best overall record in the NBA, then you got to look at possibly Cade being as an MVP candidate. So you got to watch the numbers. Every game that either SGA or Jokic misses, you will see their number move down lower and lower and lower, and Cade's move up. But the sneaky guy to look at too, may not ever get there. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Edwards, and I think Minnesota is a sneaky team to watch in the Western Conference.
I don't know what's going on in Chicago. Why don't you help me out here? I mean, I think they had lost 11 straight. In 30 seconds here, you tell me, what's going on in Chicago with the Bulls?
They finally did it, Big Sills. They blew it up. They had to. They had no choice. Now, they got a bunch of guards that could play. Anthony Simons, Buzelis, Josh Giddey. I like what they did. I even like getting Jaden Ivey, but he can't stay healthy. But for them, blow it up and start over, which they're doing now.
Man, unbelievable that you got those rafters with all those guys in the rafters there, and you're watching
Jordan not coming back, Sills. Jordan and Pippen ain't coming back. Dave Bing ain't coming back. Jerry Sloan ain't coming back. None of them are coming back.
That's right. Rick Pitino's famous line, Larry Bird and Kevin McHale are not walking through that tunnel. That's not happening in Chicago. Coach, we appreciate you always, man. I can't tell you enough how much we appreciate you coming on with some college and some NBA. We're going to talk with one of the truly legendary broadcasters. Today's sports world is set up on what Roy Firestone did with Up Close. That's next on SportsGrid.
Michigan at a 57% chance right now, followed by Arizona, Duke, and Houston. Here's the interesting caveat, Joe, for Michigan, who's the favorite right now. On February the 8th at 5 a.m., they were trading at 40%. Today, 57%. People like themselves some Michigan here.
Well, Donnie, exactly, because Michigan, it just vaulted themselves to number one in the AP poll.
Prediction Markets Edge. Only on SportsGrid.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too, and what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago? How much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo. Only on SportsGrid.
I have my own account. I don't need to have any. He didn't say any of that. So I'm of the belief that if someone accuses you of something and you don't deny it, there's a reason you didn't deny it. Because you kind of feel like they got me. And yes, I'm not going to tell you I did it, but I did it.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, and with the Clippers, Craig, it feels like Kawhi is on an island. We saw him ball out in the All-Star game the other day. Kawhi was very impressive, and he's had a fantastic season. I think when you look at the Clippers, if the Clippers' record was better, but he's still James Harden, you would be talking about Kawhi as an MVP candidate. He's been one of the best players in the league in terms of how he's been playing. He's been fantastic.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
I got to tell you that all the sports shows that you see today really came, and there was really a benchmark show back in the day that really all these sports shows today have morphed off of. Every single person in the sports world wanted to go to Up Close with Roy Firestone. Though that show was the template and the gold standard, and he joins us now here on SportsGrid. I mean, Roy, I appreciate you doing this with us here, and I got to tell you, I mean, did you ever think about the impact that show Up Close meant, and what you think today when you see all these sports shows on, the impact that show had?
Well, first of all, Dan, thank you, and it's great to be here, especially a former Cane like yourself. I'm a Cane. We had a pretty good run this year. I thought they had a real shot at win. They had a shot at winning everything, and they threw into coverage. That's a whole different story. But thank you for the kind words. Here's what my view of it is. I don't think anything on the air now, and I'm not saying this in a self-aggrandizement way, but I really think it's in a literal way. I don't think there's anything on the air now in sports where it's a straight-on, one-on-one talk show on television. Yes, there are shows of all kinds. There's me with my Orioles shirt on. I was an Oriole bat boy. There's me with Dan Patrick over the years. I'm looking at this monitor here. And I don't say this with lacking humility at all. I was lucky enough to have a show for parts of 4 different decades mostly at ESPN, a few years on USA Network. But we've lost, I think, the civility of just having a conversation with people without having a blind side of opinions, a blizzard of opinions, and yelling and screaming, and everyone having to one-up each other in all areas of broadcast and in certain areas of politics too, unfortunately. So I think my show maybe is a dinosaur in some respects. My show was Up Close, and then Up Close Prime Time, and I did a show for Mark Cuban. I just like conversation. Sit down, talk to the person, from the horse's mouth, as they used to say, and get their view of things. I didn't have a need to enforce my opinions and views on certain things. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Dan, you do a great job with a lot of opinions. We just heard a terrific 10 minutes about opinions in college basketball. But my style wasn't really relegated to that kind of thing. It was more in civility and conversation and finding out what made people tick. We don't see that anymore.
How about this? And I'm going to compare you to a Johnny Carson of Sports Talk, because Johnny Carson made the comment, though, I'm not here to give you my political opinion. I'm here to pull out as much as I possibly can from the person that's across from me so that I engage both sides of the aisle. That's what your show did, Roy. It was, whether you were Democrat, Republican, or independent, I wanted to watch you because you were interviewing and pulling out of the guy that you were interviewing things that maybe we didn't know. Are you saying that's what's been lost?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. It's a big chunk of it. But also this, I think that clickbait, social media, and the like dictates negativity and hostility and arrogance. I think the more outlandish and outrageous you can be, the better shot you have at getting clicks. And that's just the fact. People don't seem to react to, someone's good nature on the air. It's not my style. It just isn't who I am. I love people. I've always loved people, and I love to hear their story. And my opinion, left, right, center, whatever it might be, isn't as important as hearing that guest's story. And the other part of it is this. They are my guest. Literally, if you have somebody who's a guest in your house, you don't start talking, in a hostile way about what they think or what they don't think. We've had enough of it in our society now. But I thought as a guest, I didn't want to blindside people. Not that I didn't ask tough questions, and I did, and it's well chronicled. I took on a lot of things. But I feel like there's a lot of hostility, and it's fueled by clicks and social media. I really do think that.
All right, here. Who was your favorite guy all those decades? Was there one interview that you enjoyed the most?
Oh, well, I always loved Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley was one of one, an original, the best interview, it was almost like cheating when you had him on because he was going to carry the show. I thought Wilt was amazing. Wilt Chamberlain, one of my favorite stories is first time I met Wilt Chamberlain for the TV show. I was trying to ask him to do the show. He was wearing a silver and purple silk jumpsuit with a burgundy beret, a lemon lime feather coming out. He had these wraparound orange sunglasses, tangerine sunglasses. He had a big boa scarf, and he's got no shoes in front of a $200,000 or $300,000 white Rolls Royce. I said, Wilt, look at the way you're dressed. You're 7'2". Would you like to come on the show and talk about it? He goes, Roy, I'm trying to keep a low profile. So that wasn't exactly a low profile for Wilt. Wilt was never low profile. And you know what's interesting, Dan? Jordan's kind of low profile, if you think about it. For as flashy as a guy and as very confident as he is, and we saw the Jordan documentaries, in a weird way, he kind of stays out of the press. I mean, unless he has to. Of course, he had that lawsuit, NASCAR thing about 2-3 months ago. That was pretty public. But Jordan, even Tiger Woods, for people who could easily be the darling of media, they've stayed out of it for the most part, unless they really have a need to do it. I was fortunate to have Jordan when he was 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, and 50 years old. I'd like to get him now at age 60. By the way, when I say I'd like to get him, I'm still interested in doing a show like it. I still think there's room for it in American television, sports television. And I'm pitching some stuff right now. We've got a documentary in the works. So I'm very excited about, what's going on ahead of me. But in the next segment, we're going to talk about a different world for me. But I really do think that the shows, there's me and George Foreman. He was part of our honoree. There's the late great Kobe Bryant. Boy, I can tell you a story. If you want to hold that real quick, I can tell you a great story about Kobe. The first interview I ever did with Kobe was pretty much the first interview he did in Los Angeles. It was for ESPN. He was 18 and a half or 19 years old. He came into the shoot that we were supposed to do, and it was raining, and lightning hit the building and knocked out all our lights. And it was going to take 2.5 hours for us to reset the lights and get all the equipment back. So I told Kobe, he walked in. He was, again, just barely out of his teens. I said, Kobe, can you come back? Because we're doing 2.5 hours of reset. He goes, no, I'm not coming back. So I go, oh, what a jerk this kid is. He says, I'm staying here because I want to learn about how this works. And he sat there for 2.5 hours looking at cameras, looking at the equipment, the lighting. He says, I want to be a producer someday myself. I want to be a director of films. This kid was 19 years old, Dan. And he spoke to us in the first part of the interview in Italian, because, of course, he grew up in Milan. And his father, Jelly Bean Bryant, was a star, I wouldn't say a star, but a player in the international league. So he grew up in Italy. He did part of our interview in Italian. Just a one-of-a-kind person. Yeah, of course, he had some potholes along the way, and of course, he had some controversy in his career. But man, I've never seen anybody work like that in anything he ever did. And after we lost Kobe, I adopted a dog named Kobe because I wanted to keep his memory alive. The dog is still with me. In fact, he's right in the other room right now.
I love that. Let us continue this in the next segment here, Roy. I'd love to continue this here with you. God, there's so much to hit on with you here. I mean, man, like I said, this up close, folks, this was one of the absolute gold standards, and it still is. And I'm so happy to hear that he wants to try to get a show like that back on the tube, because I think in a time like this, Roy Firestone is needed more than ever, especially in journalism today. So we're going to talk more with him, get his thoughts on it. We'll finish that up there, too, also with Kobe Bryant. The great Roy Firestone will join us and continue next right here on SportsGrid.
I know you did it. Talk!
I'm innocent. Got the wrong guy. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Okay, it was me. I did it.
Bringing an owl to an interrogation? That's a power move.
Every time. Yeah.
Hiring America's largest injury law firm for your injury? That's also a power move. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
how much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
We continue our conversation with truly one of the best and greatest sportscasters of all time, with one of the greatest shows of all time, Up Close with Roy Firestone. Man, I wish we could be saying that again, Roy, here, and I appreciate you doing another block here with us here. But, you know, I got to ask you, too, you know, I mean, when you look at the landscape today, what is journalism today to you? Do you think, like, we have the Pat McAfees of the day now, and I think that's kind of what you were alluding to when you're going with the outrageous compared to what you did with Up Close. Give me your take on what journalism is today.
Well, first of all, I'm not here to knock anybody's style, okay? Pat is who he is. It's not my style, but that doesn't mean that he's not, you know, relatable or connectable to the public and the viewer. So bless him, man. Same thing with Stephen A., who I personally spent time with, and he was a fan of mine, continues to be a fan of mine, been very nice to me. It's just not my style. That doesn't mean that they're not valuable as broadcasters. But I do think that when I did my show, it was revealing and not an assault. I think there's a lot of people who do a lot of assault TV and radio and blogging and whatever, sometimes without even talking to the person. I never assaulted my guest. I always welcomed he or she on my show. And I felt that they revealed something of themselves willfully. People used to say, oh, you make them cry. By the way, we did 5,000 or almost 6,000 shows. I think we counted 20 people who cried out of 6,000. That's not making everybody cry. But I will tell you a very quick story, Dan, if I can, for just 1 minute.
Yeah, please.
When I did Jerry Maguire, which I didn't even think was going to end up with the final cut. I thought it was going to be on the cutting room floor. And little did I know it was a big scene in the movie. I would find out a year later after we filmed it. But I had no idea of the reach of what it is to do TV or movies in this case. I'm in Liverpool, England, about 6 months after the movie was released. I get a tap on my shoulder. I turn around. It's Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney goes, hey, I know you. Where do I know you from? I said, Paul, you don't know me, but I know you. He goes, no, I know you from somewhere. And the woman that was with him said, he means the movie. I went, oh, you mean Jerry Maguire? He goes, yeah, you're the guy who makes him cry. What's your name? I said, my name is Roy. He goes, don't make me cry, Roy. That's a true story. And it shows the reach. the reason he knew the movie, his music was used in the film and he was following where he wanted to put it because he had the control of that. So he watched the movie 30 times. But Paul McCartney, knowing that I make people cry, or supposedly, that's kind of it's kind of a lazy, cheap hook that people say about me, because we did a hell of a lot more shows that made people laugh than cry. But I'll take it if that's my calling card. But Paul McCartney knowing who I was for a few moments was pretty cool.
Absolutely. I'll ask you kind of a controversial question. Do you think athletes today, if they win a gold medal or any kind of achievement, should go to the White House?
Well, every Democrats and Republicans have both done. I don't begrudge Trump for 1 second for bringing the hockey team in. Here's my gripe with that. He should have welcomed the women's hockey team 3 or 4 days before. He didn't. He waited till the men won, and then he made kind of an offhand remark. We got a big laugh by the guys. The women's teams are killers, man. They won 3 gold medals. They worked just as hard as the men. And I felt it was almost in my opinion, not a slight particularly, but it was afterthought, it seemed like a political thing. And that's the only thing that bothered me. I have no problem with him welcoming the hockey team. I do have, by the way, a problem with the White House released a clip of one of the hockey players saying things about Canada that he never said. They doctored that. I don't know who is responsible for that, but that's wrong to put some words in people's mouth. And that's a scary thing that's going to happen with AI, because you're going to be able to hear voices and see voices that aren't really what they said or showed. And that's scary. That's a whole different ballgame for the media. But in terms of the teams going to the White House, sure, I think it's overdone now. I think we've completely lost the original. Nixon started it. Nixon had the All-Star. And that's another thing. I interviewed Nixon. It was fantastic. I didn't always agree with him politically, but boy, we got along talking baseball. And he, at the end of the interview, I'll never forget it. He goes, I always enjoyed the show where you had your dad on for Father's Day. And you tell him that I said he did a great job, right? So I called my father. My father didn't like Nixon. My father goes, that bum. I said, wait, Dad. He just said that you did a great job on the show, and he was one of your favorite shows, and he wanted you to have his best regards. So my father goes, well, he did do some good things, too,
Absolutely. So what are you doing now? What do you have planned?
Well, first of all, there's 2 documentaries in the works, one regarding me directly and one regarding an artist by the name of Robert Rieger, who was on our show, a documentary about his photography. So I'm working on those. But I'm also this weekend, as a matter of fact, tomorrow, Sunday, in Los Angeles, I am appearing as a performer. Some may know, some may not know, that I've done a live variety show about sports for better part of 30 years. And I sing, and I do impressions, and I do bits. And we are going to do a mostly musical show at a place called Vibrato in Los Angeles, the top jazz nightclub. And I'm going to do 13 songs with a jazz band tomorrow night. That's just one of the things I'm doing. I'm still doing the sports stuff, and I still do corporate speaking. But I don't know if you have a clip or you can show a clip or anything like that. But I sing, and I have an album out, and I'm thrilled to be able to get up in front of a live audience and perform.
Absolutely. Roy, I'll tell you what, we're going to have to do this again if you have time for us. We've got to be able to do this again, and we will show that clip. Have a great performance this weekend, and I got to give it to you here too, Roy. Don't forget, you got to throw it up there. You got to put the U. Thank you so much, Roy.
Dan? And you know what, Dan? The Canes might be better next year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Roy. That is Roy Firestone. We are going to go to Sileo Says, and we'll talk again. And again, I got to tell you, I'm going to kind of go there a little bit, and we're going to hit on a little bit of what Roy Firestone said when it came to, again, missing the boat a little bit when it comes to, again, the Team USA and the women and the men. Did the president miss a moment? Did he miss a moment? We're going to hit on that next. Sileo Says. Then we got Jimmy Robbins from NBC. We'll do it next right here on
Michigan at a 57% chance right now, followed by Arizona, Duke, and Houston. Here's the interesting caveat, Joe, for Michigan, who's the favorite right now. On February the 8th at 5 a.m., they were trading at 40%. Today, 57%. People like themselves some Michigan here.
Well, Donnie, exactly, because Michigan, it just vaulted themselves to number one in the AP poll.
Prediction Markets Edge. Only on SportsGrid.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo. Only on SportsGrid.
I have my own account. I don't need to have any. He didn't say any of that. So I'm of the belief that if someone accuses you of something and you don't deny it, there's a reason you didn't deny it. Because you kind of feel like they got me. And yes, I'm not going to tell you I did it, but I did it.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, and with the Clippers, Craig, it feels like Kawhi is on an island. We saw him ball out in the All-Star game the other day. Kawhi was very impressive, and he's had a fantastic season. I think when you look at the Clippers, if the Clippers' record was better, but he's still at James Harden, you would be talking about Kawhi as an MVP candidate. He's been one of the best players in the league in terms of how he's been playing. He's been fantastic.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Going to the White House happens to be one of the greatest things that you could possibly have happen to an athlete. I've been to the White House. When my 1987 championship team from the University of Miami got a chance to go and meet Ronald Reagan, it was truly one of the greatest moments in my life, is going to the White House and having my team honored and having the President of the United States honored. As I mentioned in the open, it's not really about the guy that's in the White House. It's more about my team being honored. However, I do think the President of the United States, Donald Trump, missed a moment here. We talk about equality. We talk about women's sports and Title IX. One of the most important things that President Nixon did was instituting Title IX. If you're a firm believer that men should not be in women's sports, what a golden opportunity you had to really revere the women's team and call them on their great moment in the locker room there and celebrating with them on them winning the Olympic gold medal. Unfortunately, the President of the United States missed that. And with that offhanded comment that he had in the locker room by downplaying it, saying, oh, by the way, we also have to invite the women too. Whether it was a speed bump and an offhanded comment, still, you're going to have one side of the aisle look at that moment and say, you had a chance to galvanize the country with both the men and the women's team all at the same time. Instead, you missed the moment. I think the President of the United States missed a moment there to really help women's sports. Remember something about these men. These men are going to go back to Winnipeg. They're going to go to New Jersey. They're going and playing professional hockey and making millions and millions of dollars. These women have to go back into society, and these women have to go back in and get jobs. How great of a moment could it have been for the President of the United States to have the U.S. women's hockey team in a time when we have midterms coming up, that you would have them out promoting you? Instead, you missed the moment. You made women a second-class citizen there with that offhanded comment. And again, either you support not having men in women's sports, or you're using people as tools. Now, look, I'm not naive to sit here and believe that we use politics with sports and we divide people whenever we can. We see the media now dividing this great moment in American history with these two U.S. teams. The men doing something for only the third time. Squaw Valley, Lake Placid, in Milan, Italy. Only 3 times the men have ever won the Olympic gold medal. What a great opportunity it would have been for the President of the United States to bring us all together and having men and women on the same playing field. Because at the end of the day, when the women got up on the podium there and they were standing there representing the country and the flag went up, there's no different than the men when they were standing up on the podium and those guys were being celebrated. It was an Olympic moment that could have been cherished and revered forever. You know, again, we are in a very polarizing time. I get it. Sports is here to do what? It's to galvanize us. I say this to people on a constant basis. There's a reason that you could sit in a stadium with 75,000 fans and not worry if the guy sitting next to you is a Republican, Democrat, or an independent. We're there to celebrate sports. Sports is the last beacon when it comes to galvanizing us and bringing us all together. It is very few times that we have in our country, or any vehicle really, in our country, where we can bring people together. Unfortunately, we missed the boat many times. People want to politicize it. People want to make it galvanizing. At the end of the day, I thought the president missed a moment. I'm a big fan of Title IX. You know, it's funny, when I was a player and a college player at the University of Miami, you know, I didn't really realize that much about women's sports until I had a daughter. And I see the things that she goes through with women's sports in high school and in college, and what women don't have in the journey that they do have to go through to get their footing in American sports and on the sports pages. That was a great moment. And I cheered just as hard for the women winning the gold medal as I did the men. And I just wish the president had cheered just as hard too for the women as he did the men. It was a great moment. And unfortunately, all these things get in the way with politics being used, pawns in the game. Unfortunately, again, our country needs something to galvanize us, to bring us together. It's great, without a doubt, those accomplishments, they'll never be forgotten. First time in Olympic history that we had the men and the women at the same time win the Olympic gold medal. Hey, as an American, that was one of the coolest things that we got a chance to watch, and it was just so well done. How about the job Mike Tirico did too? Holy cow. You talk about versatility. That was just absolutely sensational on how NBC put that on. All right, speaking of NBC, one of my favorite broadcasters of all time, we're going to talk with the legendary Jimmy Roberts. I'll tell you this. He's been a friend of ours for a long time here, and he always finds time for us. We're going to talk a little PGA, and I'll also talk to him about the Olympics. We'll get his thoughts. That's next, right here on SportsGrid.
Michigan at a 57% chance right now, followed by Arizona, Duke, and Houston. Here's the interesting caveat, Joe, for Michigan, who's the favorite right now. On February the 8th at 5 a.m., they were trading at 40%. Today, 57%. People like themselves some Michigan here.
Well, Donnie, exactly, because Michigan, it just vaulted themselves to number one in the AP poll.
Prediction Markets Edge. Only on SportsGrid.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too, and what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago? How much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo. Only on SportsGrid.
I have my own account. I don't need to have any. He didn't say any of that. So I'm of the belief that if someone accuses you of something and you don't deny it, there's a reason you didn't deny it. Because you kind of feel like they got me. And yes, I'm not going to tell you I did it, but I did it.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, and with the Clippers, Craig, it feels like Kawhi is on an island. We saw him ball out in the All-Star game the other day. Kawhi was very impressive, and he's had a fantastic season. I think when you look at the Clippers, if the Clippers' record was better, but he's still at James Harden, you would be talking about Kawhi as an MVP candidate. He's been one of the best players in the league in terms of how he's been playing. He's been fantastic.
Newswire. only on SportsGrid.